Good morning. This is Mission Control Houston on Monday, June 3rd, 2019. We are live here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room with a live view of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft in the grasp of the Canadarm2 robotic arm. This morning, we're bringing you live coverage of the release of Dragon from the International Space Station for its return to Earth with more than 4,200 pounds of research and return cargo. The release window opens up at 11 a.m. Central Time, and shortly after Dragon is released, it will conduct a series of 3 departure burns, or firings, of its main engine to move to a safe distance away from the station and exit the approach ellipsoid for its return back down to Earth, ending in a parachute-assisted splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, about 203 miles southwest of Long Beach, California, later this afternoon. Today's release is being controlled by ground controllers here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Teams here are being led by Flight Director T.J. Creamer, joined on console to his right by Capcom Brandon Lloyd. You'll hear Lloyd talking to the station crew from time to time as teams go through the procedures for Dragon's release today. And on the robotics console is robotics officer Troy McCracken. He will be sending commands today to open up the snares on the end effector of the Canadarm2 robotic arm to allow Dragon to be set free for its return to Earth. And SpaceX Mission Director Jay Arena is leading teams in the SpaceX Flight Control Room in Hawthorne, California. Teams there will take over Dragon operations once it departs the vicinity of the International Space Station all the way through its splashdown in the Pacific Ocean later this afternoon. Dragon's journey to the International Space Station began on May 4th when the spacecraft launched from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off over the Florida coast with about 5,500 pounds of NASA cargo and science investigations to begin its 2-day journey to the International Space Station. Dragon arrived to its capture point on May 6th with astronaut David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency at the controls of the Canadarm2 for capture, as NASA astronaut Nick Hague backed him up and monitored systems. A few hours after capture, Dragon was installed to the Earth-facing port of the station's Harmony module. And we're taking another live look at the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft. The station is currently flying over Europe, about 260 statute miles over the Earth. Dragon is returning to Earth later today with more than 4,200 pounds of research and return cargo. About 5 hours after Dragon departs from the station, it will conduct its deorbit burn, which will last about 12 minutes and 45 seconds. It'll then take about 30 minutes for Dragon to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere for its parachute-assisted splashdown about 203 miles southwest of Long Beach, California, later this afternoon, around 4:55 p.m. Central. Earlier this morning at 7:30 a.m., flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston used the space station's Canadarm2 robotic arm to detach Dragon from the Earth-facing side of the station's Harmony module and maneuvered the vehicle into its release position. Back here in Mission Control Houston, Flight Director T.J. Creamer is taking a final go, no-go poll from flight controllers here around the room to make sure all systems are a go before the release of Dragon. Again, the release window for Dragon opens up at 11 a.m. Central Time. Robotics Officer Troy McCracken here in Mission Control Houston will send commands to open up the snares on the end effector of the Canadarm2 robotic arm to allow Dragon to be set free for its return to Earth. Dragon will then conduct 3 departure burns, or firings, of its main engine to move a safe distance away from the station and exit what's called the approach ellipsoid, which is the mythical cone around the station that's called the neighborhood, if you will, of the International Space Station. At that point, NASA's tasks as part of the joint mission operations will be complete as flight controllers in the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California, take over operations of Dragon from there. This is another view of the Dragon cargo craft still attached to the Canadarm2, as it will be for the next few minutes before it's released for its return to Earth later today with more than 4,200 pounds of research and return cargo. And we're hearing internally that both Mission Control Houston and SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne are a go for departure.
Station Houston, David, we are still go for Dragon departure on time. Begin monitoring for release per steps 3 and 4 of 1.602.
Copy, go on time, starting to monitor for release.
And for all crew, this begins the no exercise constraint.
And copy, Houston. We're off the exercise.
Thanks, Nick.
Moments ago, you heard from Capcom Brandon Lloyd confirming all systems are a go for departure.
Station Houston, David, ISS thrusters are inhibited and ground M1 is ready. Next calls will be from Robo.
Yes.
Robo is a call sign for the robotics officer here in Mission Control Houston, Troy McCracken, and it still looks like everything is in place for the release of the Dragon cargo craft.
Station, Robo, proceeding with release.
Proceeding with release.
Station, Robo, release commanded.
I see tension decreasing.
Station, Robo, snares open. Begin monitoring for drift out.
Copy and concur.
And release has been confirmed at 11:01 a.m. Central Time as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying 259 statute miles above Myanmar.
We're proceeding to back off.
Copy.
Station, Robo, back off in progress.
Copy. We see the arm moving.
That backaway call from David St. Jacques in the cupola at the robotic workstation on board the International Space Station. He will now maneuver the Canadarm2 robotic arm to back away from the vicinity of Dragon as it slowly moves away, setting the stage for a series of 3 departure burns for Dragon.
Robo station on 2, 1.5 meters clear.
Robo copies.
And here's a live view of the Canadarm2 backing away from Dragon, now standing by for the first in the series of 3 departure burns for the spacecraft.
Robo station, 4.5 meters clear.
Houston copies.
Arming depart. Depart command armed.
Copy.
Houston on 2, Dragon depart commanded.
Houston copies.
The first burn is complete. It was a 6-second burn. The second of the 3 burns is planned just seconds from now.
Station Houston departure burn 1 is complete. Departure burn 2 in approximately 1 minute. Continue monitoring for step 5 of 1.602.
Copy, step 5.
Station Houston SSRMS back away is complete.
Copy, back away complete.
The second of the 3 burns is underway.
And On to see burn in progress completed.
And David, we concur. Departure burn 2 is complete. Departure burn 3 will be in approximately 7 minutes. Continue monitoring per step 6 of 1.602.
Copy step 6.
And you just heard confirmation the second burn was good. The third in the series of burns to complete Dragon's departure from the station is planned about 6 minutes from now, and that will be a much longer burn of 22 seconds in duration, completing the opening rate required for Dragon to depart the approach ellipsoid.
Station Houston, ISS thrusters are enabled.
Copy, thrusters enabled.
Again, Dragon has one more burn to depart the vicinity of the International Space Station. After that third burn, Dragon will be a safe distance away from the station for its deorbit burn planned around 3:56 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. That'll be about a 12-minute 41-second braking maneuver by Dragon's engine to slow it down, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its descent back to Earth and a parachute-assisted splashdown in the Pacific Ocean later this afternoon. Dragon is returning to Earth later today with more than 4,200 pounds of research and return cargo. Some of that is critical science experiments, spare parts, and other equipment to be refurbished and returned to the station at a later date. Once Dragon splashes down in the Pacific later this afternoon, it'll be recovered by the SpaceX recovery team in the splashdown zone about 203 miles southwest of Long Beach, California. We're still waiting for confirmation on coming up on the third departure burn by Dragon. Again, that burn will be about 22 seconds in duration. This is a view of the Cuckoo workstation inside the cupola on board the International Space Station, and this is the same view astronaut David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency is getting now as he monitors systems. And the third in the series of 3 burns is underway. And the third burn is complete.
David, departure burn 3 is complete. Dragon is outside the keep-out sphere.
Copy that. It's a beautiful sight. Farewell, Dragon.
Farewell indeed. It was a heck of a mission.
Looking forward to hearing how the rest of the operation proceeds.
We'll keep you up to date.
And that was Capcom Brandon Lloyd confirming the third stage burn is complete and Dragon is outside the keep-out sphere, and a bid farewell to the Dragon cargo craft by astronaut David St. Jacques. We're now just a couple minutes away from Dragon departing the approach ellipsoid, which is the mythical cone around the station, or the neighborhood of the space station, at which point integrated operations between the flight control teams here in Houston and the SpaceX flight control team in Hawthorne, California will be complete. At that point, NASA's tasks as part of the joint mission operations will be complete as flight controllers in SpaceX Mission Control Center will take over operations of Dragon.
There we go.
Just to recap some of the milestones from our coverage so far today, Dragon was released from the Canadarm2 robotic arm at 11:01 a.m. Central Time. It then conducted a series of 3 departure burns to move away from the station. Robotics officer Troy McCracken here in Mission Control worked with Expedition 59 flight engineer David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency in the cupola on board the space station to back the arm away from Dragon as it began moving away from the station. Dragon is now on its way to exit the approach ellipsoid, which will get Dragon out of the vicinity of the International Space Station. It will move a safe distance away from the station for its deorbit burn and parachute-assisted splashdown later today.
Do you want to call when we're ready for the second one?
Absolutely.
Station Houston, for your awareness, Dragon is outside the approach ellipsoid on a safe 24-hour free drift trajectory.
That. Thanks for the status. A beautiful view of it because the solar panels are illuminated by the nav lights.
Nice.
And that was Capcom Brandon Lloyd confirming that Dragon is outside of the approach ellipsoid. Dragon will now be commanded by flight controllers in the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California, to execute a 12-minute, 41-second deorbit burn around 3:56 p.m. Central Time today. That burn will slow Dragon down by just over 113 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its descent back through the Earth's atmosphere in a parachute-assisted splashdown in the Pacific Ocean about 203 miles southwest of Long Beach, California. Recapping the events from today, earlier this morning at 7:30 a.m., flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston used the space station's Canadarm2 robotic arm to detach Dragon from the Earth-facing side of the station's Harmony module and maneuvered the vehicle into its release position. Dragon was then set free about 11:01 a.m. Central as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying 259 statute miles over Myanmar. Robotics Officer Troy McCracken here in Mission Control sent commands to open up the snares on the end effector of the Canadarm2 robotic arm that held Dragon in place after it was unberthed and moved into its release position for departure this morning. Dragon then executed 3 departure burns to move to a safe distance away from the station, where it will continue to move for the next several hours before its deorbit burn at 3:56 p.m. Central Time later this afternoon. Dragon's parachute-assisted splashdown is scheduled to happen around 4:55 p.m. Central Time, about 203 miles southwest of Long Beach, California. The SpaceX recovery team is on the scene in the splashdown zone, ready to retrieve Dragon and more than 4,200 pounds of cargo, including science samples from human and animal research. Dragon will then make its nearly 48-hour trip back to the port for the unstowing of that research and return cargo. Dragon's release today set the stage for another departure tomorrow when the Progress 71 cargo craft will undock from the aft port of the Zvezda module at 3:40 a.m. Central, headed for a deorbit burn and fiery re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean, completing its 7-month stay at the station. With Dragon now safely on its way back to Earth, that'll wrap up our release coverage for today. This is Mission Control Houston.